So let's talk about differentiation, because the subject we're going to be talking about is Shaklee as a business, and specifically the concept of Shaklee as an answer, not the answer, but an answer. One way that we can tackle the healthcare crisis that is consuming our country, and in fact many other countries, throughout the world. Obesity is increasing even in less developed countries. We really are facing some very, very serious challenges. In the U.S., maybe even more because of factors that have developed over time. We end up paying twice as much as any other, I believe, advanced democracy for our health care. And I think the last time I looked at our statistics, our public health was number 26. So we're paying twice as much to be number 26. That's like a real mathematician or a businessman to know that really doesn't add up. So, Eli, tell us a little bit about your thoughts as a businessman yourself, as an entrepreneur. What is it about the Shaklee opportunity and the Shaklee products, particularly, that addresses some of these big issues?
Well, let's start with, in business, especially in entrepreneurism, you always want to start by defining the problem that you're trying to solve. And the problem we're working on solving here is people needing to live healthier lives. And you hit on some of these numbers. It's absolutely staggering what's happening in the U.S. today. Healthcare is around about $3.5 trillion. It's something like 1 out of every $6 in our country's GDP is actually going to our healthcare. And when we say healthcare, it's a little bit of a misnomer. It's really a sickness care, right? Like, you don't go to the doctor to stay healthy. You go to the doctor because you get sick. And healthcare costs are skyrocketing. I'm guessing everybody on this call, everybody who's listening, all of your friends have experienced a drastic rise in the healthcare expense. It's becoming fairly normal now to have people spending $25,000 to $30,000 a year between their premiums and their deductibles. If you do the math on this, Bob, it's really fascinating. You could buy about a $500,000 house with a mortgage payment that you could pay with the price that people are paying for their medical expenses right now in the U.S. on an average basis. It's pretty amazing, the cost. So that's the problem on a financial level. On a personal level, you look at the number of people who have diabetes. Last year, the estimate was that 30 million adults in the United States have diabetes. Of those, about 23 million are diagnosed and about 7 million are living with it undiagnosed. And that's the adults. 5 years ago, it was estimated that potentially 1 in 4 youth in the United States had diabetes or pre-diabetes. And that statistic I've heard is potentially getting closer to 1 in 3 right now. I'm an Air Force veteran. I've worked closely with the Air Force on some issues around sports and health. And I was told about a year and a half ago that one of the main things that the military is concerned about right now is the fact that it's only fewer than 1 in 5 kids, it's somewhere around 1 in 6 kids are even eligible for military service, largely because of health-related issues. This is something we have not seen before. So it's becoming a major economic problem. It's becoming a national security problem. It's becoming, one of, if not the major problems facing America today. So as an entrepreneur, when I look at the first question of what problem are you trying to solve, we're trying to solve at the singular level, at the one-person level, the health crisis in the U.S. We're not going to say we're going to take care of that $3.5 trillion problem, but what we can do is we can solve that problem on a one-on-one basis, because the number one driver of expense of healthcare in America is considered to be lifestyle choices. It's basically what people are eating, the lack of nutrition that they're getting, the overconsumption of empty calories, and the lack of exercise and activity that they have. That's considered to be the top driver of healthcare expense in America today. And so that's where Shaklee comes in, because Shaklee's working on the nutritional component and a bit of the lifestyle component associated with being involved with a healthier lifestyle, using healthier products, things that can actually drive your health. And on a financial front, we know it works. There's been a landmark study. There's been many, many studies that show that Shaklee and proper nutrition make a massive difference on your health markers. So there's really no question about that. And now what we're seeing is that people are becoming more responsible financially for their own health and well-being. And that's where you see the convergence of the healthcare crisis, the problem that we're solving, and the solution that Shaklee brings to the table. So I think from both of those points of view, it's a very, very attractive business to be getting into. I mean, you want to get in anytime you have an opportunity, sooner rather than later. But let's face it, this crisis is not going to go away in the next 5 or 10 years. So I think this is going to be a great business to be in over the long haul as people are trying to decide where they want to engage with some extra hours or extra effort that they're putting in on a home-based business.
Yeah, those are some very, very, very compelling points, and really something that we need to look at, as a country, as you said, from a health standpoint, from a national security standpoint, from a human suffering standpoint. All of that ill health represents, in my view, an unacceptable level of suffering that people experience. So let's turn our attention to what advice would you have, Eli, as a business person? There are some people who are either start at the beginning of their Shaklee career on the phone here. There are some people who are maybe resetting their businesses. What would you focus on? Given what you've just said, what would you focus on? What would you have people focus on to really help them build their business as quickly and efficiently as they can?
Well, I think that the first thing is you got to recognize the opportunity. If you've been involved with the business for, a long time, whether it's 5 years or 10 or 15 years, realize that the market's changing drastically on a number of fronts. And you have an opportunity now a little bit to hit the reset button because the market dynamics are just so doggone good for this business. And that's, we've already talked about the healthcare crisis and this being a solution. But there's another piece of this, Bob, that you and I have talked about offline about other trends that are happening in the markets. Home-based network marketing businesses are exploding, and there's a reason for that. And quite simply put, it's because they work. It's because companies are realizing that spending a ton of money on advertising, putting images on your TV screen, or now they're trying to put it on your mobile device, it can build brand awareness, but the U.S. consumer is becoming incredibly savvy. We may have health problems, but we're very savvy consumers, and we're not trusting of advertising anymore. But what marketers are talking about as the holy grail is social validation of products. And if you think about this, here's an example I like to use. If I see an advertisement, I like eating sushi. So if I see an advertisement for a restaurant and it says it's got great sushi, and Bob, you tell me, oh, that's not a good restaurant. This restaurant's got great sushi. I went there last night and it was superb. I am always going to take the recommendation of someone I know and I trust over an advertisement. And what network marketing companies are capitalizing on is the proliferation of the ability for people to have a large network through things like social media and electronic communications that we've never had before, and to be able to spread their influence and then monetize it. So it's a tremendous business opportunity that's been coming about, and that's why I said these network marketing companies are skyrocketing in value, and many, many, many people are creating a substantial amount of personal wealth for themselves, for their families, because they're capitalizing on this business opportunity. The cool thing about Shaklee is I think they've got everything. They're addressing the biggest problem in the U.S. They've got a solution that actually works, and they're in a market that's exploiting market trends of social validation and interhuman relationships to do product distribution and credibility for their products. So if you're just getting started, realize that you've got these tools, and it's a great time to do that. But then you also have to engage with the market. You have to learn what you're doing, learn about the products, understand why Shaklee is offering a great solution. I do a lot of conversations, a lot of speeches for Shaklee, and people come up afterwards and say, I feel so emboldened now because I feel like now I feel like I'm offering a real solution to people around me. So the more you can learn about what the products do, about the reasons why they can help reduce healthcare costs through healthy living, through better lifestyles, then the easier it is to have conversations with people you know and people in your sphere of social influence who are going to be interested in partnering with you to either A, live healthier lives on their part, B, improve the lives of the people around them, or C, grow a business. And so, my biggest suggestion is just understand the opportunity that you're faced with right now and capitalize on it, because, it's like people right now wish that they bought Bitcoin a year ago. They're thrilled they didn't buy it 3 months ago, or 3 weeks ago. In the same way, the best time to get in this market, I think, is right now.
Absolutely. And when you consider a couple other questions, you really touched on the reasons why network marketing as an industry is exploding, and specifically network marketing companies like Shaklee that have been in the business for 60 plus years, proven product line, hundreds of millions of dollars for search, never ever embarrass us. But there is a component also that's going on in our country and other countries where people need extra income, don't they? They actually need an opportunity. For whatever reason, the income disparity has been increasing, and a lot of market dynamics and much of the sense of security that other generations may have had, or at least for a period of time after the Second World War, that people could really kind of count on, going to a job, and having a pension, and that was their life. Things have really changed a lot, and people need to, in the same way that we, I think, can't actually rely just on a doctor to keep us healthy, we need to keep ourselves healthy. In the same way, we want to look around and say, what can we do what are our opportunities? What's my opportunities? Maybe as a person who doesn't have a lot of business background, or maybe someone who doesn't have a lot of capital, a lot of expertise, what can I do to secure myself financially? So would you talk to us a little bit about that from your perspective, Eli, as a business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm in my late 30s, and so I've sort of had a front row seat to the change in the way people have viewed employment from when I was probably in high school. It really started changing, where the idea was you're going to get a job with a company, and you're going to work your way up the corporate ladder, and maybe 35 years later they're going to give you a watch and a pension. Well, first of all, we're wearing iWatches now, so that went out of date pretty fast. But more importantly, a lot of those companies are even going out of business. Let's say you worked at Kmart, for instance. The last Kmart in my town just closed. I live in a city with 500,000 people. Would you have thought 30 years ago that betting on Kmart for your pension was a bad idea? So that's been on the one side, that we've seen these giant corporations that are just sucked under by the new economy. On the other hand, as people are advancing in their careers, it's becoming not only more acceptable, but more desirable to have a bit of a zigzag pattern. You stay in a job for just a few years, you acquire some skills, you master it, you take that to another position. And so everything is saying, obviously, you can't work for one company forever. And yet, your family still needs an income. You still have to pay your mortgage. You still got house payments. And things like healthcare costs are going up, not down. And so many people in the U.S. are realizing they have to find another way to make some income that's actually quite a bit more stable than their work environment, because you're probably not going to be working in the same place 5 years from now that you are today. One of the cool things about a network marketing business is that in 5 years, you actually will be in the same company. You may not live in the same house. You may not get the same W-2 paycheck, but you're going to get the same 1099 paycheck from the company. And that brings up another point. Everybody is aware right now there are massive taxation changes that just happened. And one of the things that should be on the forefront of everybody's mind is the ability to earn income on a 1099 or contractor type basis, because it opens up the door for wonderful deductions. And, Bob, I'm sure you've experienced this, and I know many people have been involved in the company for a long time, but this is a well-known benefit of having a home-based or network marketing business, is that it legally gives you the ability to take things that might otherwise not be a tax-deductible item and enables you to deduct some of that from your other income. So I know a lot of distributors who have spouses that are high earners, and they actually got involved with network marketing companies because they were able to improve their lifestyle largely through improving their tax situation. So there's benefits on every which way from long-term stability in the way that you don't have with your primary employer, to the ability to sort of help reduce your tax burden. And, sometimes it's just the financial freedom of whether it's having a few $100s a month or a few $1,000s or a few tens of thousands of dollars a month more. You're never going to sit there and say, gee, it's the end of the month and I've got a little bit too much money in my bank account.
You can always find good ways to spend that money.
You
can't find.
You know what? If you have that problem, just reach out to me. I'll help you solve that one. That's the problem I'd love to help you solve.
All kinds of wonderful things to spend our money on that are good. So one last question. I think some people may still have a little bit of a feeling in their mind. Is this kind of business structure really as legitimate or good as the business structure that most people are familiar with? And when we spoke last, toward the end of the call, you had some really eloquent things to say about that from your perspective of seeing what is happening in the corporate world. So just stepping back to kind of the 30,000-foot level, is this channel of trade, if you will, this network marketing channel of trade, here to stay, and why, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's number one, it's here to stay. Number two, not every network marketing company is ethical or principled or should be in the business. And I'm going to caveat that by saying, just like we see in every other industry, a lot of people have condemned network marketing because there's been a few bad actors in there. But, I still use an accounting firm despite the fact that Arthur Andersen did horrible accounting at Enron. We don't tend to condemn other industries in the same way that people have over time associated one or two bad actors with an entire industry. That being said, I think reputationally the industry is really surging right now because it is working. Now, getting into the much more technical piece of this, if you look at one of the things that I look at when I look at a network marketing company is the core business setup around a compensation system, around a sales system that makes sense. And I look at Shaklee and supplements and health products, and they have what you call like a high R&D cost, research and development. Shaklee puts a lot of effort into the science behind the products. That's why so many Olympians feel comfortable taking it, for instance. But that's a high R&D cost product. On the margin, it's not an expensive product to produce. And so if I look for a like business, I would find that with things like pharmaceutical companies, for instance. And we don't think twice about the fact that pharmaceutical companies pay a tremendous amount of money in advertising and then also in sales commissions for their reps. And when you actually peel back the financial reports and you start looking at it, you realize that if I were to look at, maybe a pharmaceutical company, look at a company like Shaklee, they'd probably actually look fairly similar because, again, a pharmaceutical, they put a lot of money into the R&D, the patents, the IP behind their product, and then they're able to pay a high sales commission because they have a low marginal cost. If you change that over, let's say apparel, for instance, might have a much higher marginal cost of production and then a lower ability to pay for commissions on sales. And so when you see an industry like that, I don't think that's a particularly good network marketing opportunity, as opposed to companies that are set up around higher R&D and lower marginal costs or cost of goods sold. And so fundamentally, people ask all the time, is it sustainable? And the answer is, if you're in the right industry, yes, it's absolutely sustainable if the cost of the products is such, if you've got defensible IP on it, things like that that are in the background are such that you can afford to pay commissions to your sales team, which is effectively, in many ways, what a distributor is or an entrepreneur inside a network marketing business. And so, to be very clear, from a business point of view, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. It looks very similar to what many other companies that are operating in similar spaces do. In fact, if you look at another health product company or a supplement company that sells to a big box store, what are they going to do? They're going to pay a tremendous amount of money in marketing and advertising and maybe quite a bit less than Shaklee in R&D. But the back-end financials are going to look very similar to Shaklee, and we don't question that if you're selling your your products at GNC or Target that you're a long-term sustainable company. So anyway, I hope that answers a lot of questions people have about the sustainability of a network marketing company. I do not propose that every network marketing company is ethical or is in the right sales channel. However, I think Shaklee is extremely well positioned from a business point of view. There's no reason why this can't operate in perpetuity, grow, and be an income for you and your family for many, many, many years, because it just makes perfect business sense.
Well, that is wonderful, Eli, and I think that we'll finish on that point and open it up to questions, because that is, after all, from our perspective, just like from our unitary individual perspective, we grapple with the macro healthcare issue by taking care of ourselves, right? Can't take care of other people necessarily. We can take care of ourselves. And in the same way, we can choose to partner with a company that operates completely ethically, has been for 60 years. And just one other point to kind of put an emphasis on, those high costs up front are really quite an advantage. If a company is willing to pay, if a company is willing to pay the hundreds of millions of dollars to do the R&D and to manufacture to a very, very, very high standard, then that is the protection. That is the primary protection of us as entrepreneurs, because that creates a product that, as you say, works, and the whole virtuous cycle of the business is there, and it can go on in perpetuity.
Well, and Bob, to pause on that for 1 second, that's what we would call in business a barrier to entry. It's, you can't just start a supplement company with the kind of research that Shaklee has. The other major barrier to entry, if you've been to a conference, you hear Roger Barnett, our CEO, constantly talk about patents. Shaklee has locked down the IP, the intellectual property behind these products, which enable them to have a much better long-term income stream because they've got defensible IP. So it's another term to sort of think about when you're looking at a company that's positioned long-term. Do they have something that they can keep somebody else from doing? And Shaklee has invested hundreds of millions of dollars. They've got their patents. They've got defensible IP. And therefore, they're entitled to reap oversized returns for years to come.
Beautiful point. Okay, so we are at the questions, comments, kudos part of the call. If anyone has a question for Eli or a comment or a